I recently talked about some of my dreamy ethereal blue eyeshadows and highlighters, and I had some requests to talk about some greens. And I've tried a whole lot in this category, and I genuinely do believe that when it comes to tone and texture, there is one of each category that will flatter anyone and everyone. And it's really great to know what some of these options are. Green is also a great color for any season, so let's go ahead and get into talking and swatching about a whole lot of options. First, we have to start with a classic. This is Mural from Clionadh. I feel like a lot of people that are familiar with Clionadh know about this shade. It's a favorite and a top 10 for a whole lot of people. It's an electric multichrome and it has kind of a mint base with a really fiery shift in it. And part of what I really like about the electric shadows is that they're very approachable when it comes to texture to a lot of people because they are so smooth. And this is a shadow that will continue to be iconic. Next, also from Clionadh and another electric shadow. This is the shade called Emblem, and this has also a light kind of minty base that makes it very ethereal, and it has a beautiful pink shift. I love a good green to pink shifting shadow. And this shade in particular has almost a pearlescent finish. Again, because it has a really smooth texture, I think it is a formula that's going to work for a lot of people. The next shade also from Clionadh is called Sterling. This again is another electric. I realize that a lot of the electrics have a very ethereal kind of property to them, but this one is so beautiful. It doesn't really have much of a shift, but it has this beautiful kind of silvery sparkle throughout that just has such a special way of reflecting the light. It almost looks like it's wet on the lids. From Touch of Glam Beauty, we have the shade Newly Minted. This is one of their Color Me Multi shadows, and I find that a lot of the shadows in this category are sort of lighter and more ethereal. And something I always like to mention is that this is a little bit more of an emollient formula, but a little bit goes a long way. And you could even apply a very sheer wash of pigment with a fluffy brush. This shade in particular has a lime base and a silvery gold shift throughout. Also from Touch of Glam, we have the shade Iconic from that same Color Me Multi line, and this shade has a really kind of beautiful minty base, and it's incredibly shifty. Like, think about the type of shift that you get with the Cosmos from Terra Moons. It's one of those shades that I feel like in certain lighting, you can even get almost a full rainbow type of shift. You get yellow and pink and some blue, definitely super beautiful. And next from Terra Moons, we have the shade Earthshine. I would say that this shade reminds me a little bit of Sterling from Clionadh. So it's got that really kind of light and ethereal minty base and a sort of silver leaning shine and sparkle throughout. I do find that the sparkle in this shade compared to Sterling is more intense, but it also does have a bit more texture. So either way, you definitely wouldn't need both. And here's what all of the shades I just talked about look like swatched to my arm. The labels are from the wrist down. And here's what they look like swatched in another lighting so that you can appreciate those shifts a little bit more. These are all definitely incredibly special green shadows. Next from Shine by SD, we have the shade Glow For It, and this is from the Sparkletopia collection. These are definitely some of the sparkliest shadows in my collection. They also have the sparkle lights, and I would say both of these categories are extremely topper-like. This has sort of a brownish red base, and it has a light green blue sparkle throughout. Next, of course, we have another Sparkletopia shadow. This is called Nova Glow, and this is a super interesting shade. It is still very ethereal, but it's described as having a deeper olive base with an intense gold to lime shift. And if you're somebody who prefers more neutral shades, I do think that a shade like this is going to be a little bit more approachable, because while it is green, I do think that it is more on that neutral side of green. Next, we have the shade Melted Myth, and this is actually a new formula for Shine by SD, and it's super interesting. Now, this is very sparkly and topper-like as well. It's described as being a turquoise shimmer drenched in fairy silver. And that is a super beautiful description, but what I like about these shades is that they have a multicolored sparkle look to them. Recently, I've been really drawn to shadows that have multicolored sparkles, even more than super shifty shades. But don't get me wrong, I do love a shadow with a good shift. Next we have the shade called Champagne Twist, and this is another metallic mirage shadow. I would describe this as being sort of a grungy mint shade. Like, it has a little bit of a hint of brown in it, and it has golden and pink sparkles throughout. I do want to mention that with a lot of the shades in this line, I don't think that you need all of them. There's definitely several that will give a very similar effect, but I think this formula is super unique. Next we have the shade Fairy Wings. This is another Sparkletopia shadow, and this has a really kind of beautiful champagne brown base, and it has a very light and ethereal green sparkle throughout. All of the shades that I've mentioned so far from Sbsd have a very sparkly topper-like effect. So if you like that type of shadow, I definitely do recommend trying out some of these formulas. Now I have a shadow from Dieverune. This is the shade Lightning. It's from one of their most recent releases called April Showers. And what I really like about this shade is that it is such a perfect example of the type of multicolored sparkle shadow that's very interesting and that I've been super into lately. I genuinely hope that the brand decides to release more shadows like this. And so this shade has a green base with multicolored sparkles throughout. Next we have the shade Moon Moths. This is actually one of the older shadows from Dieverune. I think it's actually close to a couple years old now, and it has a very beautiful lime base and a really intense fiery shift. This one does have a bit more of a flaky texture, so that is just something to keep in mind. With a lot of the shades that I've shown, I think you would need a glitter primer. And I've had a lot of people asking me about which glitter primer I've been using, and recently it's been the one from Clionadh and Bad to the Brow called Shimmer Stay. And here's what all of the shades that I just talked about look like swatched on my arm, and the labels again are from the wrist down. This bunch in particular, you get a lot of those sparkly toppers. Okay, and now I just wanted to mention a few options from some mainstream brands. First, we have a liquid shadow from ColourPop. This is called See You Later, and it's described as being a multi-chrome. I would say that I would probably consider it more of a duochrome than a multi-chrome, but either way, it's super beautiful. It has a grungy base with a lighter green shift throughout. I think these liquid shadows from ColourPop are honestly really nice. From KVD, we have Tornado Haze. I feel like if you've watched some of my other videos, you know that I really like this formula because I talk about it quite a bit. I think that these are just such a joy to work with. They're cream shadows in the stick form, and they're incredibly intense. This has a grungy green base and a pink leaning shift. It reminds me a little bit of Royal Pear from Clionadh. Now I'm going to get into my green highlighters. This is Wet n Wild's Too Serious. This came from their Chameleon Chrome collection. And I think what's so nice about this is the fact that you get a sparkly iridescent green at the drugstore. The packaging on these is not luxe, but I think that the effect that you get is super beautiful. I personally like using this the same way that I enjoy using an iridescent shadow, especially because I think that sparkly highlighters can be intimidating until you realize that you can actually use them in a very wide variety of ways. So even if you're someone that doesn't like wearing a sparkly face highlight, you could still really enjoy a product like this. Next, we have two green highlights from NYX. First, we have Buttermint, and I actually did a whole video on the NYX highlighters. I not only swatched them, but I talked about them. I am going to link that up in the cards, but this shade is a very light and minty toned shade, as the name implies. The texture on this one is so smooth. This shade in particular is too light on my skin tone, but if you have a light to medium complexion, I think it may work really well. Next, we have NYX's olive toned highlight. This is called Butter in Black, and this is my favorite shade by far. So it's got this grungy olive base, and it has almost like a purplish shift to it. And in case you've been someone who's been on the hunt for this, I know that it's back in stock at Beaute, but I don't think it's a shade that's widely available yet. Now from Bella Beaute Bar, they have a recent highlight called the Green Goddess highlight, and this was part of their Green Goddess spring collection. It's a very beautiful minty toned highlight. It's very sparkly. It's definitely one that I prefer using as an eyeshadow or as an inner corner highlight. but it's a beautiful shade and it's very smooth in its texture, especially considering how loaded with sparkle this one actually is. From Dieverune, we have another recent highlight. This is their April Showers highlight. It's very smooth in its texture. It is very sparkly. It's another one that I prefer using as an inner corner highlight and as an eyeshadow, but this shade is super unique. It has just a hint of grunginess to it as well, and it also has multicolored sparkles in it. Dieverune just gives so many interesting and unique shades. Then we have two highlighters from Clionadh. This was a part of their Fruit Lighters collection that came out last year in 2024, and these are all sparkly highlights. They're very colorful, they're a lot of fun. You can of course wear them on the face. Again, I prefer using them as inner corner highlights and as eyeshadow, but these are beautiful. Sour has a more minty base, and then we have the shade Tangy, and this one is my favorite of the two. It's got a slightly grungier and more olive-toned base to it. As someone with an olive undertone, I've been finding myself more drawn to these type of shades recently. I also just really love the packaging on these. Like, the whole presentation was so well done with the fruit imprint, which on mine, they're a little bit worn away at this point. Here is what all of those shades look like swatched to my arm. Again, the labels are from the wrist down. And then I thought I would cap off the video by talking about a few eyeshadow palettes. All three palettes that I'm going to mention are from Chinese beauty brands that have become so near and dear to me. Starting off with Girl Cult, this palette is from the Herbal Compendium collection that came out earlier this spring. They came out with this really cool quad color story that has 4 shimmers in it. A lot of the focus of this collection was on green products, so all of the shades in this particular palette have a green lean to them. And if you're somebody who likes capsule palettes, I think that this is a great value. Definitely these 4 pan palettes that have all shimmer are my favorite from Girl Cult. Next we have Kryptein Cosmetics, and they have some absolutely incredible color stories. This is called Burnt Forest, and in particular, Burnt Forest has 2 ethereal greens in it. They have one that is more of a topper shade that has sort of a brownish base to it with a green shift throughout, and then more of a lime green with a very fiery shift throughout. I'm sure that some of you are familiar with Kryptein Cosmetics, but if you're new to them, and you're somebody who likes colorful eyeshadow, really special shimmer shadows, I definitely recommend checking them out. And in case you're curious, they do have a website where you can find all of their products. Here's some quick swatches I did of the whole palette because I'm sure some people are curious about what the color story looks like swatched. And then I'm also going to mention their most recent palette called Sunset Symphony. This is such a beautiful, bright, summer color story, and it has a couple of really pretty ethereal greens in it as well. Here is what those shades look like swatched on my fingertip. I just always can't get over how special the shimmers in these palettes are. And here's what the whole palette looks like swatched on the back of my hand. Alright y'all, I know that this was quite a number of products that we talked about in this video, but I hope that you enjoyed hearing about all of these different products and seeing them swatched. I'd love to know if you've tried any of these shades or if you have any other shades that you would recommend in this category. I'd also love to hear about other categories of makeup products that you'd like to see swatched in a similar way. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.